Hello, viewers. My name is Adam.
I'm Aaron.
This is Give Me a Productions. Bring you another TV series review.
Alright, so we looked at The Mandalorian, and then we saw the other series that came after us.
At least attempted to see a lot of the other series.
There was some stuff that was dropped.
But we are here to review Ahsoka.
Now, Ahsoka, for the most part, was a series that I was looking forward to. Not necessarily because I was so impressed with actress Rosario Dawson's portrayal of the said character when she first filmed it, but I was interested with the concept that this series was also going to act as though it was a spiritual successor. I'm talking about Star Wars Rebels.
And in Ahsoka, this is the latest, at the time of this video, is the recent live-action Disney Star Wars series.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we reviewed The Mandalorian in a previous video.
Yes.
And we addressed that as a major highlight. To get some stuff out of the way, here's a quick rundown on each of those, how we feel about those series. The Book of Boba Fett. Concept, it would have been like one of the better of the series.
Yeah.
But in execution, we only think that's just an okay. And it's mainly, that series was mainly saved due to the second half being a continuation of the Mandalorian story during that time.
Yep. And again, of course, you have Andor. We tried watching maybe like the first couple of episodes.
We only watched the first episode.
Yeah, I could not jump back on it. I'm sorry, it drags on way too long.
The mere fact that, based on the tone and how it's executed, it strips way too much of why people liked Star Wars in the first place.
Mm-hmm. And then you go straight into Obi-Wan. I didn't really see the need or the purpose for actually
Same thing for Andor.
Exactly.
The mere fact that they're both prequel series.
Exactly. Either way, it just did not, I'm glad Obi-Wan or Ewan McGregor was able to showcase that, yeah, he still got it, just like Hayden Christensen.
A lot of the main criticisms that we have for them is that they drag out clearly on a 2-hour film.
Mm-hmm.
And try to spread it out into multiple episodes when they don't necessarily have enough story.
You cannot tell a serialized series by chopping up a 2-hour film. It doesn't work out. There's just too much stuff that you are you're forced to try and fluff up, and it never feels like it's going anywhere. And that, unfortunately, has been a continuous trend throughout a lot of, not just the Star Wars series that Disney Plus has, but quite a few other Disney series as well.
Okay, so Ahsoka, if you are not aware, is named after the titular character of Ahsoka Tano.
This is a character that you're actually introduced in the Clone Wars series that was also helmed by Dave Filoni himself. This is a character that is supposed to be Anakin Skywalker's apprentice.
Yeah, she's an animated character.
That's translated to live action.
She made her live action debut prior to her own series in the season 2 episode of The Mandalorian.
Again, I didn't necessarily find that Rosario Dawson really actually embodied that character enough for me, especially for what that character represents in the series. But I was willing to give her the benefit of the doubt going forward if she was actually able to actually impress me.
But her own story in this was, as of right now, is a mini-series.
Mm-hmm.
The plot is a direct continuation of the story detail that was teased at the end of that Mandalorian episode. That we find Ahsoka on a mission of finding the whereabouts of the Grand Admiral Thrawn.
But not just that, along with apparently her new apprentice, or her once apprentice, Sabine Wren, another member of from the Rebels gang, is also on the lookout for their own comrade, who's also missing action, Ezra Bridger, who was the main lead from the Rebels series themselves.
Now, in this show was greenlit with 8 episodes on end. And Dave Filoni, he is the sole credited creator of the show and also the main and only writer.
And it really actually shows to the extent that this was pretty much one particular person's vision, be it for better or for worse.
It's just that similar to what our criticisms had from previous other Disney Plus shows, this does share a lot of that slow pacing issues. There is a lot of interesting elements that do help that are intriguing enough that allowed us to that intrigued us to go and finish off the series, but they are too far between. Especially in the case of something that there's a lot to appreciate about for the series because of how much of it takes elements from the animated series that many hardcore Star Wars fans have actually been watching.
Yes.
I find because of how the episodes kind of like are pretty much dragged across.
Yeah.
The elements that are shown are basically the broad strokes of them as compared to when they were shown in the animated shows.
Basically, how I feel about at least the storyline is concerned is that I felt that this series wasted quite a few episodes on a particular plot element, only to come to a realization that
this is mostly just set up.
Exactly. I can definitely say that a lot of the standouts for this actually comes into the characters that are here in general. Again, you have the character of Ahsoka Tano being played by Rosario Dawson.
She shows there's potential for this actress to embody what was
promised for the character that you actually see.
Her performance-wise in general is very muted.
It is.
And the execution of the overall delivery. Her performance as this much older version of the Ahsoka character who was debuted as a teenager
just doesn't translate to what you would actually think that character would be, in this point in their lives.
Now, mind you, she was we saw an adult, like a slightly much more younger adult version than this character in Rebels. And this show takes place about 10 years after where that series ended.
Which in itself is actually a mixed bag too, because I don't like it when you set a series in such a far part in between when it was last time you was actually introduced with them, and then you don't have anything that helps us, connect the dots towards their point of where they're at right then in the story. But that is not the case for this character, especially with Rosario Dawson in the lead. I found myself questioning why this show was called Ahsoka.
Yes.
Too often did I feel as though this was really just the continuation of the Rebels game than it really was an exploration in the character of Ahsoka Tano.
But most of the emotional connection and payoff is not from her.
Nope.
It's actually from a character, Sabine Wren, who in this show is brought to life by Natasha Bordizzo.
Who, in this particular case, completely, in my opinion, embodies who I felt Sabine Wren was supposed to be. She's the troublemaker.
She's the rebel through and through.
Exactly, and you totally get that. Even with her her dynamics with her quote unquote master Ahsoka, it's there.
But Sabine, like her character, even despite the at least say a lack of engagement with or understanding fully on this relationship between Ahsoka and her, it is appreciative that we see such a flawed character. She feels real because she messes up a lot.
She also comes to emphasize with the concept that, yes, I have messed up and I do have stuff that I need to work on, and she acknowledges that.
And also another character and from the Rebels that is brought to life is Hera Syndulla. She's played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Originally, I didn't see Elizabeth in the role of Hera. I felt as though this is probably a case where I felt, because it was the point in time that this character would have been introduced to audiences, I feel as though this would have been a role for a much older actress.
So she is actually around the same age of which.
Exactly.
It's just that she has a different vibe than what Vanessa Marshall's voice delivery was from the animated series had. Now, she does have a significant part, but her role is limited and mostly is based off setup. In fact, the most interesting aspect with her storyline actually is from her little entourage that she a surprise aspect that we were hoping to see when this series came out, especially when we know that Hera was going to be involved, was the inclusion of her son, Jason Syndulla.
Again, so much homework for so many people who probably did not watch Rebels or other Dave Filoni projects.
Though I was surprised at how much we did see of this character.
Exactly. But let's not just talk about the heroes of this series. We gotta talk about the villains too.
Yes. Thrawn, he is in this series.
And he is played by the voice actor who played him in the Rebel series.
And Lars Mikkelsen.
He's Thrawn.
He is basically, aside from a slight jarring aspect of seeing this character visually portrayed in live action form. I think the makeup could be a little bit worked off. But Lars Mikkelsen's delivery and performance, he's basically like as if he was
just jumped right off of the cartoon
animation show series.
Yeah.
When he showed himself, he's like in the last half of the series. We're seeing promise of where his story is taking off.
Yeah.
It's just that we wish we had a better idea of where.
What is his purpose?
What his intentions are.
Yeah.
It's just by the time he comes into the picture, okay,
it's almost done. It's like it's too little, too late. The character of I guess in this particular series that you find out has ties to the Clone Wars as well.
Like Morgan.
Yeah.
Her job is to find Thrawn. She's in allegiance with him. She is portrayed by Diana Inosanto. As much of the urgency she had with her allegiance to Thrawn, she's actually taken a lot of a back seat. After this, her mission is complete. Now, we're not trying to spoil too much of it, but she does take she's present throughout, but it also feels distant because of how limited that she is literally just a step back to the side.
I wish they would have gave this character a lot more urgency as far as more personal stakes were concerned for her, why she wanted to go after Thrawn so badly, especially when you figure out certain concepts about her storyline, or at least her story development.
But we also are introduced to two other antagonistic figures original to the series. Ray Stevenson, the late actor, prior to this airing.
May he rest in peace.
Yes. He portrayed a character by the name of Baylan.
Baylan Skoll. I actually did enjoy seeing when they were on screen.
Yeah, he has a very regal presence, especially in his delivery. He is one of the better choreographed fighters in the show.
And it makes sense considering if you know where he comes from and you've seen his work before this.
I feel his experience.
Exactly.
It's just that his storyline is literally...
it's like the C storyline.
It's like a C storyline.
You have an A storyline, you have a B storyline, and then you have a C storyline. And this is unfortunately in that C part that is too far in the back.
It's so far in the back that it's barely even non-existent. It's just it's a hint of a storyline.
And it's the same thing that goes with apparently his apprentice.
Yes.
The character, his apprentice, the character of Shin Hati. Again, this is she brings a lot of fierceness to this role and a lot of but because of her agency really being wrapped up between her allegiance to her master and his seed plot point that unfortunately never really gets resolved in this particular outing, it's just too much thrown away towards an end goal that we may or may not ever see.
Let's talk about the production side of things. The show does still utilizes the stagecraft volume technology.
It hit or miss on that particular front. Sometimes it looks outstanding and almost movie ready in certain sense, but in a lot of scenes, it falls flat.
I wish that, like, for some reason the show has such a muted color palette that it feels like it's such a muted color palette, but it's also, despite the mere fact that they're using the stagecraft volume to help realize these vast open areas, it feels very small in scope still. I was surprised to see as many space battles and aerial fights that did occur.
Oh yeah, some of that stuff was really outstanding when you actually got to see it, and some of the designs, the set designs were amazing. Morgan's ship is probably one of the best designed Star Wars or fantasy ships that's in that franchise that I've seen to date.
Yes, that was highly inspired by a very Art Deco and era. Even with the hit and miss of how empty some of these areas feel, I feel as though the recreation of Lothal was a good it was a good rendition, especially complete with lost cats.
And the addition of set design, or at least character designs too.
And part of the production side of things is the choreography, which we also said is hit and miss. Yeah. I feel as though most of the hit and miss and the missing aspect came from, unfortunately, due to Rosario.
Specifically, the best that I've seen from her comes from her last battles within the series itself. But I gotta say, when you actually are introduced to other elements that actually revolves around her character with other actors,
we see the other actors around her have better choreography training.
And there's a problem. There's an issue with that. Again, this is supposed to be a Ahsoka Tano show. Rosario Dawson should not have felt as though she was so inept compared to everybody else.
But who is a major highlight in the production side of things is Kevin Keener.
Oh my God! I again, talk about not skipping a sequence. I love their music. Yes. It's amazing.
Kevin Keener, he is no stranger to doing Star Wars music, as he has been a major composer from the animated series who are finally leveled up into this live action show. He brings new, fresh sound to it, and also recreating some very familiar character scores from the animated shows, if you're familiar with them. And before we give our verdict, we do want to give a shout out to actor Eman Esfandi.
Yes.
Eman Esfandi, he portrays Ezra Bridger's live action adult version.
Like Sabine Wren, I feel as though this particular actor has did an outstanding job trying to reintroduce audiences, or for the first time introduce audiences to the character Ezra Bridger, as if this character jumped from platforms or jumped from mediums. I feel as though they embodied what I wanted to see out of that character. It's just unfortunate because of the way that they wrote the story and the way that it plays out. You don't get enough of them to actually fully embrace that character in general.
What I appreciate more about his performance is that he presents Ezra's sense of hopefulness and optimism.
They are just as upbeat, just as spunky, just as hopeful as you would want them to be. And that's just promise. It does. And I just hope that we get to see more of them going on.
Now, overall, we as opposed to some of the other previous Star Wars shows that we actually decided to drop, we did finish this. And we do see promise of where this show has, especially with the lot of potential storylines that it sets up. And some of the characters are spot on, but there are some major things that still need to be approved.
Yes.
That we're not going to give it a bad, but we are going to say this is an okay.
It could have been better. It should have been better, considering where it was being built up from. But there's just still so much work left to do, and I just hope that Dave Filoni gets the opportunity to do it, and more importantly, learns even more how to hone their craft
on live action.
On a live action front. Great job on your animation fronts. But you gotta learn how to translate the medium.
Yes. And so that was our review for Ahsoka.
As always, please like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell down there at the bottom for notifications. We want to hear from you. How did you find Ahsoka?
Are you familiar with the characters and what the story had?
Yeah, are you familiar with any of the Filoni series? Because you got a lot of homework to do if you really want to catch up with this series.
Yeah. And also stay tuned for our social media outlets, Twitter,